GTK-based Linux desktops are in this kind of weird limbo state where in the past, this was a really common choice to use, or just to fork off of the GNOME desktop. But nowadays, there's basically only two desktops that are based on the latest version of GTK, that being GTK4. Obviously, you have GNOME because it's the GNOME toolkit, and Pantheon from Elementary OS. But others that are GTK based, like Cinnamon and Mate, they're using GTK3, and who knows what their future plans on, probably using a fork of GTK3. And then Brodie, well, they're porting over to Qt 6 instead. But who says you can't build a new GTK4 based environment that is also not using GNOME's Libadwaita framework? And that is exactly what Mirko Brombin has been working on. It's not GNOME, it's not KDE, it's not the new VanillaOS DE. It's new, uses less than 100 megabytes of memory, is accessible for real, and uses GTK4, but not Libadwaita. Now, considering how early the project is, assuming there's nothing obviously wrong being done, you should probably expect a small memory footprint, because if a thing is not doing many things, it shouldn't be using that much memory. But I know what he's going for here. He's saying the project is light, he's saying that is a goal of the project, and honestly, I wish him the best of luck with it. And if the name Mirko Brombin rings a bell, honestly, it probably should. So here's the one who started both the VanillaOS project, maybe you've heard of this, maybe you've used it, but much more notably, the Bottles project. Bottles is a really popular way to manage wine, to play your games, to run your Windows software. Obviously, there are other options out there, like Lutris and things like that, but Bottles has gained a lot of popularity. And over on the Twitter side, we also have a video demo. Keep in mind, this is a demo made by the developer of the desktop, so it is going to be showing things in sort of a curated, best way possible. If there are bugs, and there are probably bugs, they're probably not being shown in a demo of what the desktop can do, but you can already start to see sort of the vibe the desktop is going for here. And here we have a separate video also showing the video player. The video player is not the main focus, but there is going to be a video player that is visible on the screen. The main focus here is mainly going to be the file manager, and also, once again, what is going on with the settings panel over here. Now, immediately you're going to notice something, and if you don't, well, I don't know how you didn't notice it. Whilst this is not using Libadwaita, it's very clearly not using Libadwaita, it's still very much inspired by it, and inspired by that way of laying things out, that way of showing UI elements. I think the part where it most obviously is different is with the heading of an application. Yeah, right here. This is obviously not a Libadwaita heading. I think they're a bit much. I'm not really the biggest fan of this look. But overall, the reason why it's not based on Libadwaita is not because he doesn't like the design that GNOME has been going for. Now, there are a bunch of things we can note from these videos, one of those being desktop icons. Now, I know a lot of people don't really care about them nowadays, and even on Windows, I frankly didn't use them. But there is a small group of people that still really like them. So when I see them, when they're an option, it's always good to see. But unlike GNOME, if you don't like the look of what is going on here, you don't actually have to use this. This is using full-on regular GTK4 and is going to support full GTK CSS theming. It's also going to have accent colors if you just want to mess with colors, and he's also thinking of doing a plugin system, but full CSS theming, that's something that a lot of people really do miss from older versions of GNOME and other things that are, based on GTK3, based on those older versions of GNOME, like Cinnamon, like Mate, things like that. Also, in the demos, whilst you are seeing this double bar like you would see on GNOME, if you prefer having a singular unified bar like I have with my way bar, or maybe A better demo would be like you have on Plasma, where you have your application launcher, your time, all of that stuff, all in that one bar. You can do that as well. There is an option to have a unified bar, like you have on Cosmic and various other desktops. In many ways, what I'm seeing from this environment, what I'm hearing Mirko say about the environment, in many ways reminds me of what System 76 is doing with the Cosmic desktop, where I'm sure both projects have different reasons for why they may not like the approaches GNOME is taking to things, but both parties don't have an issue necessarily with the GNOME design language. It's not Libadwaita in this, it's not Libadwaita over in Cosmic, but if you look at what both projects are doing, you can very clearly see it is heavily inspired by what GNOME is doing. The issues with GNOME are outside of the design language. Now, over on Mastodon, someone asked the very important question. Basically, why? Why are you doing this? What is the motivation for the project? It looks pretty cool, but historically your work has had a specific reason to be developed. Bottles to improve the Wine experience on Windows, Bottles Next to fix the architecture of Bottles and improve its UX. We will talk a bit about Bottles Next in just a bit. Also, any news on Next, CPAC for a portable and sandbox package format, so I'm curious as to the perceived issue that led to this project being born. I was just tired of bloated desktops. I wanted something modern that stays under 200 megabytes. It's built natively for Wayland using LabWC under the hood to avoid reinventing the wheel with no plans for Xorg support. I love the GNOME workflow, but I'm fed up with the Libadwaita only direction and the feeling that any modification is an impurity. This is also a good playground where I can do anything without being forced into someone else's design guidelines. Oh, and I love experimenting. And this is something I've heard from a number of people that have either ported things outside of the GNOME ecosystem or did something outside of it when they used to be inside of it. Most of the people who do so don't necessarily hate the GNOME workflow, the GNOME way of doing things, or even necessarily the GNOME design guidelines, but strictly how forced Libadwaita feels in that ecosystem, where if you're doing something that is not Libadwaita, well, why are you even doing that? It should be pretty obvious that basically any modern environment being made is probably going to be built without Xorg support. I know some people aren't happy about that, but that's the direction things are going. As for LabWC, so this is a very basic, very simple, floating WL roots-based compositor. It's effectively the open box for Wayland. It's pretty much as simple as you get. If you want a simple floating environment, go use LabWC. But because it is slotting in an external compositor, if this environment is just supporting regular standard protocols, well, there's no reason why you couldn't just bring in a separate compositor if you prefer the bells and whistles of something like Wayfire, for example, or the fancy IPC and tiling of Sway. Well, that's something that could be done as well, and you actually can do tiling with this as well. That's something that he is saying, so that is something that is already going to be supported. And Bottles Next is also a very important mention, and this should kind of give you more context on the fact that it doesn't necessarily hate the GNOME design language. So Bottles Next is a bunch of things. It was going to be built with web frameworks and then libcosmic. I don't know if it's still going to be libcosmic or if it's going to be GTK. I don't know what he's doing with it, but amongst other important backend changes and re-architecting how things work to make it easier to build new interfaces for it, the design language for Bottles Next, at least the last time it was shown, was still very much akin to what you see from GNOME. It's not exactly the same, but it's still those very big UI elements. It's still those very mobile-esque way of laying things out. It's not entirely against what you see from GNOME. It's just not Libadwaita. It's not the strictness of what that framework and what the GNOME-specific guidelines basically force you into. Because whilst it might be GNOME-inspired, it's not following strictly the GNOME HIG. And he said in a further reply, the issue is not the shell, but the direction of the GNOME apps, which are part of the environment, plus the issue I have with GNOME OS just existing. But that is up to me. I have to write a blog post to really explain that last one. I'm actually very curious about that. My issue with GNOME OS is purely ethical. No idea how it works, not even interested, but yeah, I'll say it in a blog. I am very interested to see what he has to say about GNOME OS just being a thing. Now, I touched on this earlier, but you might be asking, well, where's the source code? Where's the binary? Where can I actually try this thing and actually use it? Well, everything Mirko does ends up being open sourced eventually. Ends up being published on GitHub or GitLab or wherever he happens to be using at the time. The source code for this is not yet available. There are no binaries available for it. He kind of wants to get it into a certain good enough state before actually releasing it. And frankly, that kind of makes the most sense to do because first impressions are very important. If people see an alpha for a project, look at Cosmic, for example. If people see an alpha for a project, they're going to assume that's the state of the project, no matter what happens after that. The initial first impression, very, very important. Changing that after the fact is difficult because for a lot of people that means, oh, I'm no longer correct, therefore I'm wrong, therefore there's something wrong with me, therefore I must be right because there's nothing wrong with me. So, not putting yourself in that situation is generally just a good thing. A lot of people just write things off based on the first thing they see and never just look at it after that. However, there is a GitHub account where things are going to exist. Singularity OS plus Singularity Desktop. On the note of Singularity OS, we also have a website. So there are two projects being worked on here. Sinti.dev is the home of Singularity OS, a new operating system built on top of VanillaOS, again, that being his other project over here. Please note that what you currently see on GitHub is not the final product. I have preferred to work locally over the past few months. While this has dramatically accelerated development, it has also resulted in code that requires major revisions before it can be published. Give me some time, and I'll be pushing many commits soon. And frankly, this just makes the most sense. If you haven't formally announced the project yet, if you haven't really started getting people trying to use it, it just makes the most sense to do it locally and not worry about making merge requests and having even like well-named commit messages in some cases. Maybe not even bothering to commit the code, just making changes as you go. Down here, we also have an FAQ. Why does the DE look so much like GNOME? Because I like its workflow and parts of its UI. However, this is going to change. It was simply easier not to worry about the UI yet and focus on the foundations instead. Of course, features like the sidebar, top bar, dock, and the fusion mode, which merges the top bar and dock, will stay. So whilst it is inspired by GNOME now, how much that's going to change, it's unclear, right? I would expect it to still carry some of that GNOME DNA with it, right? Because his other projects are very much the same way as well. I would be surprised if it's something fundamentally different. No Libadwaita at all, just pure GTK4 and a custom set of widgets to keep everything integrated, named Lib Singularity. And if you're building an environment, it just makes sense to make a framework that other people, or even just yourself, can use to build other applications in your environment. Rather than having to restyle everything and do all of this whole mess, just having a framework you can import and then using those widgets to build the other things you want to build, it just makes sense, right? That's just an obvious thing to do. Is this project real or just a meme? I used to joke about making a desktop environment, but nah, this time is real. And clearly, it appears to be real, judging by the videos. Unless he's just done a very convincing theming of another environment, I'm gonna go out on a limb and say, yeah, there's something being worked on here. And with this endeavor also being a new distro being made, are you leaving VanillaOS? No, absolutely not. Actually, I'm working on a full rewrite of all VanillaOS tools using the new VanillaOS SDK I created. Orchid is also the base of Singularity OS. I will just be using a different immutability approach instead of AB root. I am experimenting with something new, maybe not for day 0, but yeah, I'll take all the good parts from vanilla while continuing to work on it. So basically what this new distro is, what this new desktop is basically a testing ground that doesn't have as much stake as the main project. You can try things out and it's not going to break things for VanillaOS users. You can make changes to GTK, make changes to GNOME, and these are changes that would never be accepted into GNOME, but you can still deploy it out to a wide number of users and have them play around with it, see if it's a good idea, and maybe this environment becomes something people actually really care about. I'm curious to see where or if this project goes anywhere long term. Even if you don't like the vibe, I like seeing people follow their own vision, build something that they think is the best thing they can build, to experiment with things and just try new things out, even if you personally aren't going to use it. But let me know your thoughts down below. When this is available, when you can try it out, is this something you're going to play around with? Maybe it won't be your daily driver, but at least spin it up in a VM and just see what it's like. I'd love to know. So let me know your thoughts down below. You like the video, go subscribe as well. And if you really like the video and you want to become one of these amazing people over here, check out the Patreon subscribe Daily Bearer Pay, linked in the description down below. That's going to be it for me, and honestly, I like cool things.
Something like this.